Night of destruction. Ah! So anyway, my impatience as a driver has bit me in the ass yet again. I hurt the car pretty good last night, and it really bums me out because I thought I had a pretty good chance at winning that thing. It's the second year in a row in the Enduro that I ended up in the lead, and then I took myself out this time. Right before we loaded the car up onto the trailer, I decided to finally look at the car to make sure that it was ready to race. Boy, I had all the time in the world to look this thing over before we headed out, but of course I did not. Made some changes to it, little slight changes, and went out in hot laps, and I was loving the car. It was just ripping, rotating through the corners great, everything was the way I liked it. And I was pushing it a little too hard for hot laps, I would say, and caught up to Doug Yost, and he was cruising along in turn 2 up near the wall, and then his car just suddenly broke left. I mean, it was quick, just out of nowhere. And I dove to the left a little bit, but he tagged me in that right front corner, and it bent my control arm, and it tacoed the strut, and I actually had to be hooked off the track by the tow truck. It was a pretty good little crunch. We dragged it back to the pits and tore it all apart, and I realized that some of my good parts that we keep in the trailer as spares were here in the shop because we were rearranging some stuff, and I had not put those back on the trailer. So I threw some stock stuff that we had, some old wore out stock stuff on the car, and made it work, gave it a little bit of camber, we towed it out. It was kind of a mad scramble to get it back together as quickly as we could, but we made it happen. The bummer about having to spend all that time fixing this thing between the hot laps and the feature is Alex's car mysteriously decided not to start again before going into hot laps. And it seems like that fuel pump problem that we were having before about the trigger signal not making it to the relay happened again. And we didn't really have the time to dive into that. So Alex was kind of bummed about not being able to run that feature. Got my car out into the feature, and I started in the second row in the middle, and the car was actually rotating pretty good. Everything felt pretty decent. I got up into third place in the first lap and raced around like that a couple times and managed to squeak my way up to second place, and was racing Corbin Dalton for the lead a few times pretty aggressively. Going down the backstretch, the whole race, you're driving face first into the sun. And as much rain as we've had lately, and as wet as the track was when we got there, it was dusty. It was unusually dusty, which meant driving into the sun with a cloud of dust in your face, going into turn 3 every time was a gamble. You didn't know what was in front of you because it was just a cloud. It's pretty hard to see on video from the stands, but in my in-car, it's pretty obnoxious. This meant when you got into lap traffic, you really had to play it conservative going into that corner because you don't know what you're going to see as soon as the shadow from the bank turn dropped over and you could see everything. It's like driving out of a tunnel when it's really bright outside and you get to the end of it and you're kind of blind for a second. It was that pretty much over and over and over again. There was one point where I dove into turn 3 kind of low to pass some lap traffic, and I smoked a tractor tire that was moved out pretty far, I think. The car was okay then. It still had my front bumper. Went around for a few more laps, and then all of a sudden there was a broken down car up near the wall just past the exit chute. And you could only see that thing about halfway down the back stretch. So you know you had to enter that corner about mid-track. I did that, and all of a sudden that tractor tire was in the middle of the track, and I blasted it. And I hit that stupid tractor tire at least 3 or 4 times. I probably should have been going into that corner a lot more cautiously, but the car was rotating perfect, and I was like, well, I can spin it any way I want to in here whenever I can see where I'm going. Unfortunately, that tire was where I wanted to be most of the time. I managed to stay in second place for quite a long time, and then we got into some lap traffics, and I managed to make it up into first, and I did 2 whole laps in first place. And then the car blew up. When I was racing against Corbin, there was one point coming out of turn 2 that we kind of met door to door, and it whacked in this right side, but it didn't really hurt anything on the car other than just sheet metal. The whole reason the car blew up is because I cracked the oil pan. Hitting that tractor tire, probably that last time, it just put this big crack in the front of the pan, and all the oil slowly drained out. I was unaware that the damage was that bad, because every time I'd hit that tractor tire, I'd kind of throw the car around, and I'm like, well, it feels all right. The front right started sounding a little weird. It was a little dribbly, I guess was the right word to use. That tire was bouncing a lot more than it should have been, but it was still racing good. So I kept on trucking. There was a pretty big design flaw on this car that I should have addressed by now, but still haven't. And it's that my gauges are down low here, and I have these the bezels that come with the gauges that aim them kind of facing me, but I can't hardly see them. I've got 2 gauges in here right now. The upper one's a max toe, and I can see that. The bottom one is a glow shift, and it's smoked, and I can't see that. That's my coolant temp. My new car, those gauges are right in my face, mounted to the side of the tack. Those gauges, impossible to see. There's a chance I would have noticed that I was getting hot or losing oil pressure, but if I'm honest, even if I could see them, there's a chance I wouldn't have even acknowledged it. Because when I'm racing hard, all I'm focusing on is keeping my car off of other cars and off the wall. So yeah, 2 laps in the first place, and then it just lost power, and I stuck it in the infield, and that was that. I can't say I didn't have fun. Night of Destruction's always a great time. The Enduro is a good learning experience for the track, and I learned some things about my setup and what I would like to do to it in the future. And suffice to say, I have a fair bit of work to do on this car before next week. I can get a motor together pretty quick, but this also pushed back the core support a little bit, and my push bar looks like it's high on this side, so I don't know, I'll start getting this thing ripped apart and seeing how bad everything is. Alex managed to get us a trophy at least. Second place in the minivan derby, which is pretty cool. So this is our first year of doing anything with the vans. We've only ever ran the compacts during the Enduro, and Peter Huffman reached out to us and asked if Alex was willing to drive one of the vans for him. They were going to put together a van from Beslers, and we were like, yeah, absolutely, we'll give it a shot. And so they gutted a van and painted it all up for us, and we got to run it. The van had a transmission that was pretty much on its way out. It slipped real bad. It took forever to get it into drive, and I think the front pump may have been going in it, but Alex made it work. He did 3rd place in the Soccer Mom Nationals and 2nd place in the Demo Derby. Lost both times to the Barbie van. Congratulations to Michelle on winning both of those events. They asked if I wanted to run a van, and I wasn't prepared to really do that when I got there, but I was like, yeah, I'll do it, give it a shot. And they gave me the Ladybug van, and he goes, yeah, just to let you know, it's got a rod knock, and boy, it had a rod knock. It was loud. And I went out and did pretty much the first event only. We did the game of tag, and Michelle immediately just drove it into the back of my van, and that was it. And I'm like, I don't have enough power to catch anyone. So I had to start cutting short little circles in the square, and I managed to tag the back of another van and then pulled it to the top of the track, and it locked up completely. So it was still fun to participate, as short-lived as it was. Alex did great and really mangled that van. I was surprised it was still moving. If Alex didn't pop that right front tire because he was spinning the wheel inside the tire when it went flat, I think he would have kept on going. But Michelle's van is a tough one to beat. She's really good at that demo stuff. But all in all, it was still a very fun night. Got to try some new things. I'm happy with the way the car handles when it's not destroyed. And maybe someday I'll learn how to be a bit more of a conservative driver. But when I'm up in third or second or first, I just can't get it out of my head to not drive as hard as I can possibly do it. And I have a feeling that may have contributed to the failure this time. Well, pretty much every time. Just about every time is me overdriving the car. But I'll get it unloaded. Probably get some teardown pictures because I'm sure it's going to be some good carnage in there. Get this thing reassembled for next week. Get Alex's car fixed up. And we'll be back at the track next Saturday. I think next year we're going to try and get a van of our own prepared the way we'd like to. See what we can do in the Soccer Mom Nationals. Maybe even two, who knows. I'll see you in the next video.